Everyone thinks they know Marilyn Monroe, they know the white dress over the subway grate, they know the breathless voice and the red lips and the laugh that made the whole world lean forward, they know the name and the face and the image that has been reproduced more times than any other image in the history of celebrity. But here is the thing about Marilyn Monroe that nobody talks about. The woman the world thought it knew so completely, so intimately, so absolutely, was in reality one of the most successfully hidden people who ever lived, because everything the world knew about her was something she had built, carefully, deliberately, brick by brick, from the ruins of a childhood so broken that most people would never have survived it. And tonight we are going to take that image apart, piece by piece, and show you who was actually standing behind it. The real Marilyn Monroe. The story nobody told you her name at birth was Norma Jeane Mortensen, and she was born on June 1st, 1926, in Los Angeles, California, not in a hospital room full of flowers and family, but in the charity ward of Los Angeles General Hospital, which tells you everything you need to know about how she arrived in this world, with nothing, no father present, no money, no safety, no certainty, just a 24-year-old mother named Gladys Baker, who worked as a film cutter at the studios that would one day make her daughter into the most famous person on the planet. And Gladys was already struggling, not just with money, not just with loneliness, but with something moving through her mind that nobody had words for yet. A mental illness that would eventually be diagnosed as paranoid schizophrenia, and within 2 weeks of Norma Jeane's birth, Gladys handed her baby to a couple named Albert and Ida Bolender, who lived nearby, and walked away. And that was the beginning of a childhood that would shape everything that came after, because Norma Jeane spent most of her youth in foster residences and orphanages, moving through 12 different families, 12 different beds, 12 different versions of almost belonging somewhere, until she learned something that would define her for the rest of her life. That the safest thing you can do is become whatever the room needs you to be. Because the real you never seems to be enough for anyone to stay, and here is the secret that Hollywood buried so completely that most people alive today still do not know it. When Norma Jeane became Marilyn Monroe, when she became the biggest star on the planet, her studio sat her down and told her what to say if anyone asked about her family. Tell them your mother is dead. Tell them you are an orphan. Tell them you came from nothing and built yourself from nothing with no one to help you. And it was a lie, a calculated, precise lie. Because Gladys Baker was not dead. She was very much alive. She was living in a mental institution just miles from the studio lots where her daughter was becoming a legend, and every single month, quietly, without telling a soul, Marilyn Monroe was writing checks to pay for her mother's care, taking care of the woman who had left her at 2 weeks old, loving her from a distance that the world was never allowed to know existed. And she was also secretly terrified, not of scandal, not of exposure, but of something far more personal. She was terrified that her mother's illness was waiting inside her too. That the same darkness that had taken Gladys was moving slowly through her own mind, and every single day behind the smile and the laugh and the perfectly calculated image, Norma Jeane was asking herself the same quiet question. Is this how it started for my mother too? Norma Jeane divorced Jimmy in June of 1946 and signed her first studio contract with 20th Century Fox on August 26, 1946, earning $125 a week. And soon after she dyed her hair blonde and changed her name to Marilyn Monroe, borrowing her grandmother's last name. And what she was doing was building a character. Because playing a character is the safest thing a wounded person can do, she studied the way the camera loved certain angles and learned to give it exactly what it wanted. She practiced a walk that made rooms go quiet. She developed a voice so breathy and intimate that every man who heard it felt like she was speaking only to him. And she worked at it, tirelessly, obsessively, the way only someone who has something to prove actually works. Because Norma Jeane had spent her whole childhood being the girl nobody wanted to keep, and Marilyn Monroe was going to be the woman nobody could stop looking at. In their first runs, Monroe's films grossed a total of more than $200 million, and her fame surpassed that of any other entertainer of her time, and yet, the woman inside the image was never fully convinced that any of it was real, or that it would last, or that she deserved it. The 1950s gave Marilyn Monroe everything the world told her she should want. Fame beyond anything most humans ever experience. 3 marriages. To James Dougherty, who she had married at 16 to escape another foster home placement. To Joe DiMaggio, the baseball legend who loved her so possessively that he couldn't share her with the world. To Arthur Miller, the playwright and intellectual who wanted to save her with words and ideas and who wrote the role of Rosalind Tabor in The Misfits especially for her. And all 3 marriages ended in the specific sadness of 2 people wanting completely different things from the same woman, and she wanted children. Desperately. Privately, she reportedly wanted to have children and was pregnant several times during her marriage to Arthur Miller. However, 2 of those pregnancies ended in miscarriage, and the other was an ectopic pregnancy. And her difficulty in having children was affected by her being diagnosed with endometriosis, and she was taking pills to sleep because the darkness came loudest at night. And she was calling her psychiatrist, Dr. Ralph Greenson, sometimes twice a day, and she was reading voraciously, filling her apartment with books on philosophy and history and literature, because she was brilliant, genuinely frightening brilliant, and the world had decided that a woman who looked like her had no business being brilliant. In 1955, Marilyn started her own motion picture company, Marilyn Monroe Productions, at a time when women simply did not do that, and she fought the studios for better roles and more creative control and the right to be taken seriously. And she won some of those fights and lost others, and through all of it she kept smiling. Always the smile. Always Marilyn Monroe. Even when Norma Jeane was barely holding on. But here is what most people never mention about Marilyn Monroe. The thing that gets lost in every conversation about the image and the icon and the tragic end. She was extraordinary. Not just as a performer, but as a human being. She overcame her early image as a dumb and seductive blonde, winning critical acclaim as a serious actress for Some Like It Hot in 1959. She studied at the Actors Studio under Lee Strasberg, one of the most demanding acting teachers in the history of the craft, and Strasberg himself said that of all his students, only 2 had genuinely exceptional talent. One was Marlon Brando, the other was Marilyn Monroe. Civil rights were of great importance to her. In a letter to Arthur Miller's son, she recounted questioning Robert F. Kennedy at a dinner about his department's plans regarding civil rights, emphasizing that these were the kinds of questions young Americans wanted answered. She admired Abraham Lincoln and described him as a paternal figure. She was politically engaged, socially conscious, and deeply intelligent, and the world kept asking her to be the blonde. Just the blonde. Nothing more complicated than that. And Marilyn Monroe spent 36 years being so much more than the world ever allowed her to be, and almost nobody noticed until it was too late, and then there were the final months. And the story gets complicated here in ways that powerful people have never been fully comfortable explaining. Because Marilyn Monroe, by the summer of 1962, was not just a troubled actress. She was a woman who moved in the highest circles of American political power, She was registered as a Democrat and admired party members including John F. Kennedy and Robert F. Kennedy. And the relationship between Marilyn and the Kennedy family has been the subject of debate for 60 years. What we know for certain is that on May 19, 1962, at Madison Square Garden, in front of 15,000 people, she sang "Happy Birthday" to the president, in a voice so intimate it made the entire country hold its breath. And what we also know is that the relationship between Monroe and Arthur Miller led to the FBI opening a file on her. And after years of investigation, the FBI found no evidence linking Marilyn Monroe to the Communist Party. But they were watching her closely. And by June 1962, Monroe was fired from the film Something's Got to Give because of her frequent absences. The studio that had built her now publicly called her mentally disturbed to justify their decision, and Marilyn Monroe, who had survived 12 foster homes and a hidden mother and 3 failed marriages, and the FBI watching her house, was running out of road. On the night of August 4, 1962, Marilyn Monroe made phone calls. She called people she loved, and people she was afraid of, and people who had the power to help her, and chose not to, and her housekeeper Eunice Murray was in the house, and at some point Murray noticed the light under Marilyn's bedroom door and knocked and got no answer. And she called Dr. Greenson, who broke the window to get inside, and what they found was Marilyn Monroe lying face down on her bed. The telephone still in her hand, not breathing. Monroe died of a drug overdose on August 5, 1962, at only 36 years old. Her death was ruled a probable suicide, but the questions that started immediately after have never fully stopped. Because on the night she died, Robert Kennedy was in Los Angeles, and Eunice Murray changed her story multiple times about who was in the house and when she found Marilyn and what happened in those final hours. And the most famous woman in the world died in a room in Brentwood, California, completely alone. And the full truth of what happened that night has never been confirmed, and may never be. The same question has sparked debate among cinema scholars, cultural critics, historians, novelists, filmmakers, and the general public for decades. Who was the real Monroe? And here is what we believe the answer is. She was Norma Jeane Mortensen, born in a charity ward, abandoned before she could walk, passed between strangers until she learned to perform so perfectly that the performance became more real to the world than she ever was. She was a woman of extraordinary intelligence and courage and ambition who spent her entire life fighting to be taken seriously by a world that only wanted her to be decorative. She was a daughter who loved her mother despite being abandoned by her, who paid for her mother's care in secret for years, who carried the fear of her mother's illness every single day without ever telling anyone. She was an actress so talented that Lee Strasberg compared her to Marlon Brando. She was a businesswoman who started her own company when women did not do that. She was a civil rights supporter and a political thinker, and an avid reader and a deeply complicated, fully realized human being who deserved so much more than the world gave her. As one biographer put it, she is the most visible woman in the world, but she is completely unseen. And maybe that is the truest thing anyone has ever said about Marilyn Monroe. She stood in front of the entire world her whole life, and the world never once really looked at her. This is Hollywood Untold Stories, and the real Marilyn Monroe deserved so much better than the story she was given. Marilyn Monroe was born Norma Jeane Mortensen on June 1, 1926, in Los Angeles. She lived in 12 foster homes before the age of 16. During her career, Marilyn made 30 films and left one unfinished. Her films grossed more than $200 million. She started her own production company at a time when women did not do that. She paid for her mother's care in secret for years. She died on August 5, 1962. She was 36 years old. The full truth of her final hours has never been confirmed. She remains the most recognizable face in the history of Hollywood, but the real Marilyn Monroe was always the one nobody saw.